need to have all the facts. They need to know the truth about this pandemic. They need to be able to trust that their government and the information that they hear from politicians is based on scientific merit. The American people are strong and resilient. We can handle the truth.
That's Dr. Richard Bright. He filed a whistleblower complaint in the last hour. That was him talking about it as he did so. The complaint was filed against the Trump administration, alleging that he was let go after raising the alarm about the response from the White House on the rapidly spreading pandemic. And we just learned from his lawyers that he will be testifying in front of the House next Thursday. Joining us now, independent senator from Maine, our friend Angus King. Senator, would you like to hear from Dr. Bright as well?
Absolutely. Nicolle, he obviously has an important story to tell, but I think there's a larger picture here where this president, anybody that crosses him, I think the motto should be in this administration, don't cross the boss. Whether you're in the intelligence community, in the medical community, and working on coronavirus, if you disagree and try to do your job, which you swore to uphold, you could get in trouble and, in fact, get fired.
You know, I wrote down some of what he said as he was talking, and as you're suggesting, it had haunting echoes of the 17 witnesses who testified in the impeachment hearing against Donald Trump. There were some echoes to Secretary Mattis's resignation letter, which came after decisions about Syria and troops in Syria. I mean, it is a repeat story. Dr. Bright saying that he stood by science, quote, instead of funding projects promoted by cronies. How are we so far in and we're still pushing out the best and the brightest people like Dr. Bright in favor of cronies?
Well, the real tragedy here is that this is a mistake and a tragedy for the president himself. By cutting himself off from people who, A, are smart, B, know their subject matter, and C, will tell him the truth, he's ultimately cutting himself off from good information. And when you don't have good information, you make bad decisions. And the irony of this is that he is hurting himself. And he's always seemed to view this through a political and economic lens and not as a healthcare crisis. And I believe politically, the best thing he could have done would be to grab onto this in a firm and bold way back in February and March, led the country and done the things that are necessary to do. But they just haven't done that, and disbanding the task force, if that's what they're talking about doing, is just one more step in avoidance of the responsibility. Nicolle, there shouldn't be ideology or politics in this. This is science. This is a disease, and it doesn't take sides in politics. And you know, it just doesn't. It defies the sense of both of politics and just of the facts. And for example, testing. The only way to avoid the spread of this disease until we have a vaccine or a cure is to know who has it. And our testing response has been totally inadequate. And that's a straight up management challenge. That's not ideological. That's just, you know, we need about 2 million tests a day in order to know who has the disease and how to trace them and track them. And then you can safely reopen. But to put the responsibility on the governors for reopening without the testing is unconscionable.
Well, to your point, I mean, the political opportunity for Donald Trump was to do everything you just said, to take this and say there will be a time for politics in the fall. Right now, I'm going to get this right. That was as much as it's a human tragedy, the loss of life is staggering. I can't read the numbers and the projections or the daily death tolls without feeling just gutted. But the other piece of this for Donald Trump is what you just said. I mean, what is the way forward for opening without testing? It would seem if you want a company to open and you're Donald Trump and you want that and you think you need that, you'd get those tests yourself, pack them up in a little FedEx envelope, you know, lick it closed and send it in the mail. And that's the fastest way to get any company back open. The company knows the health of their workforce.
Well, I sent the president a letter. I'm on the supposed task force to reopen. Remember that? That was announced, and I was appointed.
Oh,
there was a conference call. Not much has happened since that. But as a member of that, I wrote him a couple of weeks ago and said, look, testing is the big problem. Why don't you appoint somebody of the stature of Joe Dunford, who's the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, someone with nonpartisan stature, expertise, logistics skills, good judgment. Put him in charge and say, we want 1 million tests a day by May 15th and 2 million by June 30th, and here's the authority to do it. Make it happen. That could happen, but for some reason, and I really honestly don't get it, because a crisis like this is actually an opportunity to demonstrate leadership. Margaret Thatcher, the day before the Falkland invasion, had a 23% approval rating. 2 weeks later, she had a 70% approval rating because she responded to a crisis with firmness and competence and ability. And in this case, the opposite has happened to the president, and there's still time. I mean, he can still reach out and seize this, but he's rolling the dice right now. That if we reopen, which he's egging on, is just it could blow up.
Let me ask you two questions with your Intel committee hat on. The first, Tony Fauci in an interview with National Geographic slamming the door shut on the idea that coronavirus was fabricated in a lab as some sort of nefarious Marvel comic-like plot. Do you think that'll stop Donald Trump or Mike Pompeo from sort of flirting with conflating the role of Wuhan as the origin and this idea of a man-made virus?
I don't think so. The short answer to your question is probably no. And what really concerns me about this, Nicolle, is the apparent effort of the administration to do what I call conclusion shopping. Going to the intelligence agencies and they don't say, where'd the virus come from? They say, don't you think it came from a lab? And, then the word sort of gets back. This is what the boss wants to hear. I am on the Intelligence Committee. I haven't had a briefing on this in about a month since the Congress was away. I haven't seen any intelligence that verifies that this was done in a lab. And even then, if it was, does that imply that it was done purposefully in order to weaponize it against the United States when, in fact, it infected China first, killed a lot of people there? So I just don't know where that goes. But again, go back to my basic point. The president ought to want to have the best information, but it looks like part of the political strategy here is to blame China. This isn't my fault. It's not our fault that we weren't prepared, that we didn't test. It's China's fault, and rally around the flag. That doesn't get us anywhere, and it certainly doesn't help the people that are dying and suffering from this disease. I was struck by your number up there. The number of cases in the U.S. right now is almost exactly the population of the state of Maine. And when you put it that way, it really grabs you. 70,000 fatalities. We've lost in the last 2 months more people than were killed in Vietnam. And so that's where I believe the president's total focus ought to be, how do we solve this healthcare problem? Because if they encourage the states to open up, and by the way, the governors are in a terrible position where they know everybody can see the economic devastation. But if a governor puts in tough rules, as our governor has, you can't see lives saved. Do you see what I mean? You know that your business has been hurt. You don't know that the tough rule may have saved your brother's life. You can't measure that. And that's the position they're being put in. And I come back to the testing. It's inexcusable that we don't have a massive national testing program. It's like we're all playing tag, but there's no way to know who's it. Testing would tell us that.
Yeah, we're playing tag blindfolded. No, you're absolutely right, and that's a perfect way to put it. I hope you'll come back. We can pick up this conversation. You're one of our favorite people to talk to about everything, and there's so much going on. Senator Angus King, thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thanks, Nicolle.
Thank you. After the break, the ad that got way, way, way under Donald Trump's skin. That's next.
When you need brutal honesty.
Move towards national testing. That is our way out of this.
When you need answers first thing in the morning.
Would you invoke the Defense Production Act as it pertains to testing and supplies?
When you need to go deep inside the story.
What is the culpability in all this?